Hello everyone, this is USA Wooden Railway, and I am here with another wooden train layout video tour. Now, this layout, in my opinion, is probably the best wooden layout that I've made so far. I've taken a lot of the lessons, track designs, and just general things I've learned from building wooden train layouts and put all of that into this layout. This layout took several days to build, and it has a bunch of new areas that my previous layouts did not, so I hope you enjoy this layout. Now, before I get started, there are a few things I want to say. First of all, this is not a bigger or grander layout. I have a limited amount of space in tracks still. I don't know when I'll be able to make bigger layouts, but hopefully soon. But in the meantime, I have to keep making wooden layouts in this small part of the basement. This means that a lot of the stuff that is on previous layouts might not appear, or it also means that, like in this case on this layout, I don't have every single wooden train I have out on the layout like previous layouts due to this limited space. I don't want the layout looking crowded, and because I can't fit all the sheds, I have to have a limited amount of trains. So there's no steam engines or rapid transit or electric trains on this layout. This is just a diesel-focused layout. Now, to make this layout video more fun for everyone, I've decided to add a few Easter eggs. The first Easter eggs I've decided to add are these 3 red people. Now, what I want you to do when watching this video is keep an eye out for these 3 red people. I'm going to place them throughout the layout, and they're all going to be doing stuff that you're not supposed to do around trains. They're going to be doing dangerous things. And I want you to comment down below where you see them and what they're doing wrong and what you should be doing instead. What you should be doing to stay safe around trains. And the next Easter eggs I have is that, if you remember, I acquired a bunch of stuff that was featured in I Love Toy Trains, Part 6, from the wooden train part. Now, I've put a bunch of those pieces into the wooden layout, and I want you to find them and point them out in the comments below. And finally, the last thing I want you to point out in the comments is there is a reference in here to a rather well-known and famous wooden train video you may be familiar with. Tell me when you find that reference, and when you do, comment down below where you saw it. Those are all the Easter eggs, and without further ado, let's get started on this layout tour. We are starting our tour at Union Station. Now, this Union Station, I think this is the best Union Station I've made, because look at the front of it. This front of it I made right here. This is inspired by the front of Union Terminal in Cincinnati, Ohio, Cincinnati Union Terminal, where they have this big, grand, magnificent entrance. So I wanted mine to have something like that, where you go up these stairs and ramps into the station. And unlike my second layout, I wanted it to be open air so you can see all the trains. As cool as the second layout was, you couldn't really see the trains in Union Station, but now you can. Here we have Amtrak's Empire Builder waiting to leave. I'm not sure what train this is, but let's just call it the California Zephyr. And in the back there is a Metra commuter train, which will be leaving to head into the suburbs to bring people home from work. So that is Union Station, and this I also added this add-on section to Union Station, which I call the mail terminal. Now, this mail terminal right here, it is inspired by the old parts of Chicago Union Station, where if you've ever been to Chicago Union Station, you've probably noticed these platforms towards the front of the station that aren't really used. Now, what those were used for is they were used for loading mail onto long-distance passenger trains. So I've made this mail terminal area. We have 2 mail trucks, a FedEx truck, and a mail truck, unloading their mail so they can be loaded into these material handling cars from Amtrak, as well as these baggage cars. I'm going to move these out of the way so you can see that. There's like this little warehouse area underneath the mail building, so that way workers can move the mail in and out of the building right there and load them into the train cars. And working that is a Milwaukee Road switcher, as the Milwaukee Road was a tenant at Chicago Union Station. So that is Union Station right there. As we move out of Union Station, there is this, what I would like to call this maintenance and engine storage area, where we have a bunch of sheds, which these sheds right here are just for holding passenger cars, like the real Union Station. They have extra coaches there. We have a Siemens charger in this shed by itself. And then in this shed, we have a bunch of Amtrak and Metra engines right here, which are waiting for assignments. I think this turned out really well in this whole passenger area layout with Union Station, the mail terminal, and this maintenance and storage facility. I think it looks fantastic. Now, as we leave the station, we pass by this Union Pacific freight train, which is headed by it looks like a Gevo, but Whittle likes to call them C-44s, but I just like to call it a Gevo because it does look like a General Electric Evolution series. There is a flag engine behind it, as well as a bunch of freight cars. And then we come to this shed right here where we have a couple engines, including my new Southern Pacific GP38, which I really like the appearance of. Someone painted some custom ditch lights onto it, and I think that's rather cute, so I decided to keep them on instead of scraping them off. And then there's a Chicago Northwestern engine in the back of that shed. Now here we come into this suburb right here, which is right outside of Union Station, where I put a bunch of random buildings, like a church, the Sherwood Inn. There's a school back there, as well as a bunch of houses and other buildings, and this comes to this suburban station right here, which is also an Amtrak station. Now you're probably wondering, why is there an Amtrak station out in the suburbs when Union Station is right there? Well, the real Amtrak trains that I see, they leave Chicago and they stop in a small suburb called Naperville outside of Chicago. So this suburb's sort of like Naperville, where Amtrak trains and Metra trains will stop to pick up people. And speaking of Metra, there is a commuter train right there, which is heading out of the city and towards other suburbs. And there's the last cars of the freight train. So that's the main line right here. And I also forgot to mention there's a street running section that leaves here and then goes through the town where there's a couple of cars also on the road. As you leave the suburb, you go through this mountain tunnel, around this corner, underneath this line, and you come to this junction right here. Now, the junction has a bunch of switches. You have one track going this way and one track going that way. Now, I'm not sure if I fully explained this yet, but this is part of a loop line. So, if you follow the main line into the city, pass through the suburb, and if you keep going beyond Union Station and beyond the engine terminal, you head around the back where you have all these skyscrapers, which is supposed to be the city's skyline. There's a Canadian National train right there. And then you circle around the spiral, around the other skyscrapers, go over Union Station, over that bridge, through the Gray Hill piece, where you see a Chicago Northwestern freight train with a Golfmobile in Ohio GP38 pulling it as well. You come down, and you're back where you started. So, essentially, there is a giant loop around the city allowing for trains to turn around. That starts right here. But we're going to keep following the main line for now. Following the main line, we go underneath this truss bridge, which has a BNSF freight train about to cross it. Cross under another track, and we come into this small farming community where we see the Illinois Central City of New Orleans flying through. Now, in this farming community, we have a switch tower to control the junctions around here, because there's many of them, as well as these farm buildings and John Deere tractors, as well as this little town right here, the town itself. Now, in there is a brand new destination I have, which is the on-time mail drop. Now, what the on-time mail drop is, it was a destination made by Lionel for their Great Railway Adventures line, where your train would pass through it and it would pick up the mail. Unfortunately, I don't have the mail car for it, nor the mail bags, but it does look really cool, so I put it on the layout anyway. Now, how it worked is, or how the real one worked at least, because streamlined passenger trains had to keep to time, they would not stop in small towns to pick up the mail. Rather than stopping to pick up the mail, they would have a special car towards the front of the train called a railway post office, which would pick up the mail while the train is moving, and the mail that had to be dropped off would just be thrown off, allowing for seamless mail delivery, which is really cool. And the Illinois Railway Museum does have a day where they recreate that, so I strongly recommend checking it out at the Illinois Railway Museum if you can. So that is the small town right there with the mail drop and the streamlined passenger train. Now, continuing from there, we pass by this windmill and all these trees, which looks really nice. And there's a switch here, but I'm not going to say what that's for just yet. The tracks go up as they go over the red suspension bridges, which are back on this layout. You get a better view of it for everyone by walking closer to it. They're back on the layout. Go around this corner over another red suspension bridge where we see a CSX freight train, as well as the Union Pacific Big Boy, which is the only steam engine on the layout this time, as I still wanted to include it as it's an awesome wooden train. Goes over the gray suspension bridge. And then we come to this massive freight yard I have right here, where we have a couple train cars on sidings, a freight station, a pair of CSX locomotives getting ready to turn themselves around so they can couple onto a freight train, a switch tower right here, and as we move into the yard, there's the Big Six roundhouse with a few engines in it, a shed which is being used to store cabooses, and this massive loading and unloading area where we have a GP30 pulling a train of tankers, and where that Canadian National train we saw earlier is leaving from. So we have the 4 gantry cranes in here, the Brio warehouse, 3 wooden cranes, a lot of different trucks, and this big cargo helicopter. So that is the freight area of the layout where we have all this stuff that is going on, and I think this is probably, minus the harbor from the last layout, the strongest and best looking freight area on the wooden layout so far. I am very happy with how this turned out. So that is that area. Now as we head this way, we have a steelworks right here where we have, this is, I think, the best looking steelworks I had. I had a steelworks on the last layout, but it was way too compressed and it felt like it was mixed with the harbor, so it didn't feel like its own thing, but now it is its own thing. So we have a couple of fuel tanks, U.S. Steel gantry crane right here with a train car that is going to be loaded. A U.S. Steel dump car right here, a switcher tending it, and a flat car with a steel beam on it, as well as this Cat's Meow Johnstown plant Bethlehem steel building to fit in with the steelworks seam that is going on here, as well as a red crane. So I think the steelworks on this layout, it looks great. I am pretty proud of how this turned out. Before we head on this way anymore, this part of the layout is intended so that way if a train wants to turn around, it can just turn around and head back to the city on the main line here. Because while this area does look mainline-ish, it really isn't a main line anymore. We come into this little town right here, which is settled against the industrial steelworks and giant freight area, which has a Amtrak passenger station with the Norfolk Southern train about to pass through. There's a little short line streamliner right here. And as the two tracks go under the bridge here, they separate. You probably remember how that mountain over there had a track leading out of it. Well, this is this track. It's just pretty much a giant turnaround right here. That's all this is. It's just a really big turnaround. Like if you want, like if your train's on the main line and you're following it around, you can basically just turn it around at this mountain and just come back around using this track right here. And if we follow the other track, that goes underneath this bridge. Goes underneath this drawbridge here, where there's a Conrail freight train. Right here there is a BC Rail freight train. Right here. Which is one of my favorite little engines. It looks cool. It goes underneath this track, goes up this incline, and then it comes to a switch where you can either go left and loop back around and head back to that small farm town area over there, which that chassis system train did. Or you can make a right turn and head back over the mountains, over these mountains right here, and back down into the city right here. And finally, there's one more track right here, which is just this track that goes over Gordon's Hill and then back down. So, like, if you see that Canadian Pacific train, if it wanted to head towards the city or turn around, it could just come up this track right here, go through the mountain and all these loops, and then either choose to come back to where it came or go to the city. And that is pretty much the entire layout, folks. Thank you for watching this video. Now, before I turn it off, I'm going to just zoom around the layout so that way you have another chance to look at parts of the layout maybe you didn't see. There's the city again. There's the giant spiral. And there's the big mountain section right here. I'm going to walk back over here. Here is the freight yard again. There's the steelworks. And there's the two sets of bridges right there. And yeah, that's the whole layout. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.